JavaScript. Yes, welcome to today's. It's all about JavaScript and understanding JavaScript weird parts. So our talk today is majorly on JavaScript. So as I've said, it's one of the trending popular languages that are around, and it's found almost everywhere. So yes, I know these common engineers have different ways of doing their things. As an engineer, you have your way of doing your thing, and somebody else also has his way of doing things. And maybe I also have my way. And personally, me, I know my preferred way. I prefer to understand than imitate a code. Okay, imitating a code to me would mean like their examples. I doubt the examples are not bad actually. They ain't bad. They are very good. Actually, they help you learn. You can see what somebody is doing from a practical aspect, and it's good. Maybe when you are looking at an example, to me, when I look at an example, I would better follow and understand what that person did in his code, rather than copy what he did without understanding what how he how, what okay without understanding how he did it. I would better understand how he did it, how he managed to achieve what he was doing, like what happened and where and how. Yes, so basically this is just like, it's just a concept coiled inside your mind. And yes, somebody saying hello, can't you hear me? I hope I'm audible enough. Somebody? Yes, so I was talking
Yeah, you
about,
are.
yeah, so JavaScript, yes. So understanding code and imitating code are two different things. So understanding is like you get the flow, you really feel the flow of that code. You know what is happening where and how and why. Than just having something that runs, but you would really have difficult time explaining how it happens. Like for instance, okay, it's not that, but niseme sasa, if you include a library, those for those people that love writing the JavaScript, the jQuery. So sometimes you will find that you have a bug that is somewhere in a in okay a bug, but it's in a jQuery file, and you want to open that file. Maybe sometimes because you just went into learning jQuery without learning JavaScript first, you will find it hard, because okay, all you know is the jQuery, but sometimes we'll have a difficult time understanding, I mean, how that thing relates with its environment, its outer environment, and all over. Like, yes, what's happening and how is it happening and why. So basically, sometimes when you want to go into these JavaScript libraries, it would be better or advisable to first have a grasp or a better, a good understanding of the vanilla JavaScript itself. So yes, for today's session, we will be using tools. So you can follow along. You can follow along with your on your end. So this is a practical session actually. So you can set up your machine to follow along. And what we will need here, the tools that we will use, we will use Chrome. So we can use Chrome. We are going to use Chrome and a text editor. So a text editor you can use of your choice. Personally, I'll be using VS Code. So first of all, for Chrome, so for Chrome, uh-huh. So for Chrome, if you go to Chrome, what we are going to use in Chrome, if you go to your Chrome, so you can have your F12. If you press your F12, what you are going to, where you are going to measure mostly for today's session, is the Chrome's developer tool. So you can get this by many ways. So if you are on Chrome, you can click these dots or button, the dotted buttons, that dotted whatever on your far right, I guess. Then you go to more tools. You come down to developer tools. So you can set it to be where you want. So to have it toggle it to toggle it to be where you want it to be, you can click those. I don't know if somebody is following, but there are these three buttons here that you can use to dock your developer tool to stay where you want it. Some people love it here when they're that when it's that end. Some people love it like, it depends with your taste. Then personally, I love mine when it's here. So yes, mine will be there for today. So yeah, we'll be having more time here on the console, on the developer tool and majorly console. Yes, then okay, back to my screen and your text editor. So your text editor, you will choose a text editor of your choice. Personally, I'm going to use Visual Studio Code. So to get your, for instance, when you want to get your Visual Studio Code, you can come to Chrome. Once you have your Chrome ready, okay, you have your Chrome ready, you can come to Chrome and look for Visual Studio Code. If you don't have it, you can look for Visual Studio Code if you don't have it, or you are prefer text editor. Some people will go for Atom, some people will go for some people will go for Sublime Text, and other people will go for, yeah, there are very many things that you can go for. So this one, so you can just come here and look for Visual Studio Code. Yes, then you can download it here. So you choose your platform. If you're a Mac user, you will go for Mac. If you are a Windows user, you'll go for Windows. If you are if you are a Linux user, you go for Linux platform, the Linux one. And there you can see there's stable and there's insider. So the stable, sorry, I don't want to download it because I already have it. No, okay, I don't want to download it because I already have it. Sorry for clicking that. Mhm. Yes, so you can download. So, so you see, for Windows, the stable version and that version, you can download these ones, the stable or the insider. So each can work, but if you go for the stable version, I think it will be very efficient. Yes, so for Windows, kuna system installer na user installer. So for system installer, I think you'll be able to run it as an admin, but the other one, this one can't run as an admin actually. So for Windows, for Linux, yeah, we have those. You can have a .deb and those other extensions are there. And for Mac, yes, so that is your preferred text editor. So you can choose any that will suit your taste. Yes, then away from that, we will now back to today's business. And today's business, we are going to be dwelling around these three concepts that it's all about JavaScript environment that makes JavaScript environment. Yeah. So it's all about understanding JavaScript environment. So the first concept we are going to look into today is syntax parsers. I know somebody might be wondering about it, but you're going to look into syntax parsers. Then we will look into context, the execution context. Then we look into lexical environment. So yes, let's get started. So a syntax parser. I know you should not be thinking much about a syntax parser. It's just as simple as its name. Like it's just it's a program that reads your code and determines what it does. Like what does it do? It just read your code and determine what it does. If it's a console, like it reads your console and invoke the rendering engine on your browser to console. We will talk about that actually in a bit earlier, about the components of the browser that the components that exist in a browser. So we say a syntax parser basically is a program that reads your code and determines what it does. So, and its grammar. and check if its grammar is valid. So actually about syntax. So it reads your code. So if you did a console.log, it checks and have something inside the console braces, it will come and check like what is the console expected to do, and is it grammatically, is it syntactically correct? Actually, that's what a syntax parser does. So just as simple as that, it's just a program that determines what your code does, and if it obeys the language language syntax. Then, come to think of it, you write a code actually. Unajua, that's why I initially started by talking about some smart engineers somewhere. So there are these smart engineers somewhere that wrote the JavaScript engine. Okay? They like the V8 engine for Chrome. This Chakra, this Spider Monkey. Um, yeah, yes, I don't know Safari. I don't know if Safari uses which one. I know Safari is. I know it's too close to Chrome, but anyway, Spider Monkey is for Firefox, and Chakra is for Edge or the Microsoft ones. So just imagine you writing your code. So for instance, we say you've written your code like you have a function there, and that function should display an hello word. So in your function, you define a variable that displays a string hello word. So how does your computer understand this code? Basically, there's something in the middle. There's something in between your code and the computer. And the computer, there's something. There's like a middleware. Let me call it so. This is JavaScript engine. So this JavaScript engine, it's the one that take your code. It's like a syntax, but okay, it takes your code and see, and then now transform it into a manner or into codes that a machine or a computer will be able to understand. It's now to transform it into a manner that a computer will know that this is a function or this a variable that is intended to do this. So because your machine or your computer doesn't understand your code the way you've written it. So you write your code. So for instance, you write your code, then it is interpreted actually. So you write a code and it is interpreted. So in between your code, there's an engine that does that work for you, and it delivers an already interpreted code for execution to the computer. And the computer just does the work of the computation. And through the rendering engine, you will get your feedback or your output. Yes, so yeah, actually, so basically, I was talking about syntax parser, and that's middleware. Let me call it the JavaScript engine. So the JavaScript engines are many. We don't have one, but the common or the one that I know I frequently use and I almost use every day is the V8 engine. Then away from that, the next concept that we are going to look into today is lexical environment. So basically, lexical environment is where something lives. So this where physically, this where your code sits. It's something like where something sits physically in your code. If you have a variable, where does it sit physically? Like unaiandika lakini iko wapi kwa code yako? Inaweza kuwa like we have lexical environment, like it's where the code you're writing physically sits. If you declare a function in a global scope, then we can say that your code, your function is in a global environment. So I just want to demonstrate that. So I want us to go to Chrome, and on Chrome, I want us to see 1, 2, 3 things, and I want us to have our developer tool. So I was talking about lexical environment. So you'll realize that I don't have, so let me just let me open my text editor. Just allow me to have my text editor on. Oh, time is going. So let me just have my text editor on. Okay. Okay. I can't see. I can't see. Yeah, I think I had this. So I will run my text editor. Hope it be fast. Actually, if you have a question, you can use the chat section to project your question. I will attend to it as I code along, or as I do the as I yeah, I will respond to it. You just shoot it there. I will do the kind of I will respond to it as best as I can. So you will see I have some files that are already existing here. Don't mind, they're not that there's nothing inside actually, but I have some files that are existing here. It's just an HTML file, like HTML, like that simple HTML. Like a simple HTML, the basic one with we call the basic structure of an HTML. It will have a doc type, the HTML tags, and all the tags that are inside the HTML tags. The compulsory one, the editor, the head, and the body. So, oh, actually, I didn't mention. So you can have your live. You can have if you are following along. You can have your live server on here. Can have your on. I mean, you can install live server if you are using Visual Studio Code. You can install live server as an extension here. You just come here and in the extension menu and you just type live server. So yes, it will come. Yeah, it will come. We already have it. So if you don't have it, you'll see the install button, and if you hit on that install, it will be installed on your as an extension on your text editor. Yeah, back to business. So I'm already running my server and it's live. So I want to come back here and I want to have my developer tool. So you realize that let me just come back to my script. Oh, there's some things in my script. So let me just comment out everything. So let me just comment out everything. And coming, yes, there's nothing. Actually, there's nothing in our code. It's only that HTML that is loaded and the basic HTML structure. And there's nothing in our script because I've commented out everything. But now I want us to see something. So when I type this, you see I get something. When I type this, I don't know, you guys, are you able to see my, is it too small? Are you able to see anything on my browser? Is somebody able to see something? Kindly confirm to me, or using the chat. Just text me. Just use the chat section to say, yeah, you are able to see that I confirm. Okay, thank you, Samuel. I think that is visible up to that point. So if I type this, actually I ignored this. I didn't define this anywhere. So this exists in my global environment. So we were talking about the lexical environment where something sits physically sits. So I was talking about this. So this actually, when I type this, you will see that I get something like it's in a window. Window basically, I mean, it's like in the global environment. So I get something like, window, and window is equals to window. Like, I mean, that global environment. Everything that is here, it's a global variable or a global whatever. So this sometimes it is more or less the same in the global environment. Is more or less the same as when I type window. I will get the same output. So if you're keen, you will see that what I get when I have this and window are the same. I hope you got it. What I get when I am in the window and this, I get the same. Like these things exist in a global environment. So when we talk about lexical environment, it's where something physically sits. It's where something physically sits. Yes. the next concept I want to touch on is execution context. Execution context. I think we are going to talk about this. This, I think, most of our demonstration, I will demonstrate this in code. I'm going to do live coding. We just demonstrate all about this. So in execution context, actually, basically, this a wrapper. It's a wrapper to help manage our code that is running. Uh, okay, it's a wrapper. Basically, execution. So let me just say something. Don't mind about it. We will explain it further. Uh, when you run your file, a JavaScript file, for instance, then we have a global execution phase creation. Like, and the first execution, it first creates execution context of the global environment. And we all know that JavaScript is don't mind about it, you're going to discuss executed line by line, or I can say JavaScript is synchronous. It's a synchronous programming language. Um, yeah, it's a synchronous programming, not asynchronous, but synchronous programming language. So basically, execution context would mean a wrapper that manages code that is running at a given time. Then, in the execution context, we are going to say about we have a global object and this. So as I had said, the global object, that thing that exists. Okay, object. Don't mind about object, but object, basically the simplest way I can define an object is that an object is a group of key value pairs, or is a collection of a key value. Okay, in JavaScript, actually, in JavaScript, because it's different from other programming languages like Java and object-oriented programming, of a key value pair. A key value pair. Let me just demonstrate that. Um, I think just can come down here. We'll okay, I will work on my, let me, I don't know if it's visible. Somebody confirm. I guess it is. So actually, yeah, when I'm talking about a variable, object, I just say an object. Remember last time we talked about object, but all an object is, let me just say I have this thing called object. So all it is a group of, or a collection of a key. So I would have a key and I would have a value. So I would have a value. So it's a collection of a key value pair. And these key value pairs can be nested. So we can have a nested object inside another object. Basically, nesting means having another object that have name. Have name. Let me just have name. Name is the key. Then the value of that name is Polasta. Then Polasta, different keys in an object is separated using a comma. So I can have so many keys in my object, but I have to separate each keys using a comma. So I can say the next key that I have is, let me say address, just to see address. Then in my address, address, I can say address. Yes, that's my address. Where do I stay? No. Having that, so I want to say, where I stay. Where do I stay? Let me say I stay in Rongatarungai. No. Before that, I want to give nasema niko na some street now. Mandazi Road. Uh, no, let me have it in a different way. So let me just have this so I can say street. So street, my street where I am is Mandazi Road. And if you want to get me, you can get me at I don't know, I can't tell my exact location, but I can say my PO box. I can just box there as just any random number, but this is my real box. You can get me here actually. So this is my box. uh, yes, so I can say you can see. Let me maybe only maybe I had one more thing. I had one more thing. So I have another item or a key. Oh, and call it age. So age is a number. So you will realize that for number, I won't use that. I will just say that. So that's a number. So yes. So basically, this is an object. So as I was saying, an object is just a collection of a key value pair. I have this key here. I have this key here. And I have this key here. But you can also see that inside this key, its value is another object. So this key, its value is another object that has a key and some other value inside it. You can see these. So basically, that's what an object is. Back to point of focus, I was talking about the global object and this. And previously, I had on my Chrome, you had seen how okay, I had shown this about this. So this exists in a global object. This is a global object. I mean, this is a global object. You can see that when when I try to print this on my console, what I get is this. So um, you can see that this is an object, and inside this object there are keys and their values. So you can see the object that I've just created now. I just want to explain that I've created this object. I created an object called object, and it had values, it had keys. So the first key was name that was given that value, and another one was an address that was given this value. So if I want to see more here, if I want to see them, I've just toggled to see have them there. So there are this, and there was this and that. Yeah. So yes, that's that. So I want to explain something why we are able to see it. Why do you think we never have it? Like, why do you think it become to be part of this? That's what I was talking about. The global. You remember we are talking about the global execution context. So this is what happens in your JavaScript file. Actually, you can see my file. I just have a file called app.js, and inside my file, I am writing a variable. I am writing an object, and inside a global scope. My object is not enclosed in any other function. So my variable object exists in a global scope. It's not enclosed in any other block of code. Actually, this one here. So it exists in a global scope. So when I run my code, the first thing that happens is called global creation of global execution context. The first thing that happens is called the creation of global execution context. It takes or it runs like JavaScript codes are run like line by line. So it comes and meet my code, and I only have a variable object, and it goes to that code and it finds that okay, it first is first displayed because it's displayed in the global execution. I mean the global level, because it is defined in the global scope. It is not closed in any other scope. I will explain about scope later. So but you see that I have it here to mean that it exists in the global scope. Like that's where it lies physically. That's where it sits physically. It is in the global scope. So you see, I have it here, and I have that thing that I defined here. Yet I didn't have it inside this. So it becomes, because this is a global object, it becomes part of this this object. So I had said before that this is also can say, I can, instead of using this, I can just say window, or instead okay, I can say window. You can just say window dot. Oh, I did call it object, I guess. So if I say window dot object, you see the output that I get. Actually, I get the object that I created. Why? Because my object that I created exists in a global scope. It exists in the global scope. So window, or these are the global objects in JavaScript. If somebody is having a question around that point, so you can post it, but we are going to continue. I think it's somebody has understood it. But then I just want to explain this code. So inside this code, just back, inside that code, I have a variable called hello world and a function called b. So function b and a variable called hello world. So I'll just go back to my Visual Studio Code, and I think I have that function here, and I have it, I uncomment that, and uncomment this. Remind me to comment the variable that I had earlier created. So I want us to note one thing, that this variable exists in the global scope. Like it's not in any other block of code. Otherwise, okay, it only exists. Okay, it's just inside the file. It means it exists in the global scope. So when I run my code, I need to uncomment this. This is how a function looks like. So when I run my code, actually, JavaScript, as I had said, is interpreted line by line. It will first come here and read my and create. Uh, it goes into the memory and create a space for my variable a. So inside the variable a, it will create using I draw them see. So in the global scope, it will go into inside the global scope during the global execution context, creation of the global execution context. It will go inside the memory. It will create a variable, a space, or a memory location for variable, and assign to it a value of hello world. Then it proceeds to the next line and create memory for my function b. So that's actually how it do. It first executes everything that exists in the global scope. Is when it goes into the other scope view. It first executes things in the global scope. Like first it executes that and goes to this function, because my function here exists is defined in a global scope. It's not inside any other function, but it is inside a global scope. It is in the global scope. So I want to run this. I think my live server is live, so just want to comment out this. Let me comment on this. So yeah, so I've commented out that. Back to my browser. So back to my browser. So when I say this, so I want just to toggle this and go down. Uh, so you will see that the variable that I created, hello world, it exists in its memory. Okay, the memory was created during global execution, during creation of global execution context. When it first ran the code, then it first creates memory for all those things that exist in the global scope. Then the one of the things that I had defined in my code in the global scope was the hello world. So it will create the memory space or location for that variable, and if you have it there, the value is assigned as hello world. Then coming down, because my function was defined in the global scope, I call it, oh, function B. It is B actually. I was looking for it. So you will see this here. This is the function that I created. It's a function B. This is the function that I created actually. Let me just toggle. It had nothing actually. So actually, you can also see uh, things that expected in a function. So yeah. So in a function, we have an argument, and I didn't pass any argument, so the value is assigned to null because I didn't. In case if I would have done, if I would passed an argument or initialized a parameter, then that value would have been not assigned null, but not defined, or not no, sorry, not defined, but I mean undefined. Its value would have been undefined neither, so it wouldn't be null. But null, okay, it becomes null when I don't have that argument passed, or I didn't even instantiated that parameter. Then this would mean I didn't have it, then I didn't have the color, and it doesn't have a length. So yeah, there are so many things that you can have with function, but this function as a name of the name of my function is B. So actually you can learn much about them. I created my function using the function constructor. You will remember that creating my function, I used the keyword function. So this keyword function here, it's a constructor that is used to create functions in JavaScript. Yes, I hope that is clear. I was just trying to explain the global execution context. Just trying to explain the global execution context. I wish I was good in graphics. I would have drawn how it happens. Actually, when you run your code, there's a stack that is created. So before we get there, so actually personally sometimes I don't confuse them, but today I confused it. When I have undefined and not defined, there's difference. So not defined would mean that actually I didn't define the, like, I didn't instantiate that variable called a. But when I instantiate that variable called a, then I fail to assign it a value, then it will give me an output of undefined. What it means is that the allocation or the memory allocation for that variable is created, and there's no value that is inside that memory. So inside that memory, there's nothing that exists. But the memory exists, but there's nothing inside it. So being that there's nothing inside it in JavaScript, you will get an output of undefined. But if you try to access a variable that you didn't create, what it means that you are trying to access a memory that doesn't exist. If you try to access a memory that doesn't exist, then the output you'll get, actually it will throw an error. For this one, the first case scenario, it won't throw an error, but you'll get an output of undefined. For the other scenario of not defined, it will throw you an error of not defined, because you are trying to access a memory that in real sense does not exist. So just to demonstrate that, I will just comment this out because I will comment out that, and just try it out, try someone out somewhere out here. So the first case, I have a var, and this, let me just use var. So I have var a, and I've given var a actually, and I've not given it any value. I've not assigned to it any value, and I'm saying that console console.log, then I'm going to log a. Then in the next line, let me first do that so that you will understand the difference. When I go to my developer tool on the browser, you will see that the output that I get is undefined. This means that the memory is created, but there's nothing that exists inside that memory. Basically, that's what it means. The memory allocation, or memory is allocated, but there's nothing stored inside that memory. So that is what it will mean in JavaScript. Then the next step, the next scenario, I want to comment out this one. So if I comment it out to mean that it now doesn't exist. It's now not a code, it's commented. It means that I haven't defined my A anywhere. Now when I go to my um, um, when I go to my developer tool, you see that I get an error. It's an code reference error. I'm trying to reference a space in memory that does not exist. Actually, that space does not exist. That memory allocation A does not exist. So I'm trying to reference what does not exist. So the JavaScript engine will throw me an error because it doesn't understand. Basically, my JavaScript engine is what does this compilation. I throw back to me an error that tells me that, this A you are trying to access is just note the difference. Actually, it's important to note, but not it's never serious if you've never experienced it, but it's nice to note. The next, yeah, you said that JavaScript is single-threaded, so it means that it is executed one command at a time. So, for instance, I had shown you we had a variable A that is executed first is when it moves to the function. It does the function execution. So, yes, you would be wondering what single-threaded and synchronous, what would be the difference? They are more or less the same, but the slight difference, according to my understanding, yes, this is just according to my understanding. All I know that a single thread would mean I execute something line a command by command, a command by command. But synchronous mean one at a time. I have one executing at a time, one at a time. And I know people. I know it's in the like, yeah, it's a talk of town that Node.js, just JavaScript, is asynchronous programming language. This is how it happens. But JavaScript is synchronous programming language. Then we have the asynchronous concept. If we talk about asynchronous aspect of it, we'll start talking about the callbacks, the promises, the async and await, whatever. So basically, this is done. It is aided using the event queues. Actually, before I continue, I just want to, in your browser, it is not only the JavaScript engine that exists in your browser. We have so many things. We have the JavaScript engine. We have the rendering engine that brings that displays. We have what? We have rendering engine, JavaScript engine. Somebody else remind me some other thing. And we have the queue, what is queue loop or queue stack? Event queue, yeah, we have the event queue. We have some other engine. Yeah, we have the HTTP engine. I don't know if it's engine, but we have an HTTP engine, not the network engine for the you get for the APIs like yeah, HTTP engine. You have so many JavaScript. I mean, the browser is not only made of the script engine. Kuna rendering engine, uh, kuna the event queues, kuna the HTTP. I know it's HTTP engine, but I know it is HTTP something. It must be engine because I know it. Yeah, it's HTTP something. Then just to yes, now I got this function invocation. So function invocation is different from function reference. In asynchronous JavaScript, at times we mostly use when we use callbacks, which can lead into callback hells, we do much of function reference. When I just call the name of that function, when I have the name of that function without including with including the two braces, the two brackets, then I don't call it. I'm just referencing to that function. So when I reference to that function, I can go back to it. But when I call it, I will have to use the two braces. So that is the function calling. So yes, so when I have function B and that, so yeah, I'm just going to demonstrate this. I hope I still got time. I have very few time left, of small time left, but I want to now be in hurry. I hope that pace is not boring. If I'm boring, that pace is not that too slow. I mean, it's not too slow and it's not too fast, but just allow me to adjust kidogo. I don't know if I had created this function earlier. hmm Or I can just create one. Yes, so let me just come down here and create a new function. So first of all I want to explain here is the execution stack. Actually, this is all about what I want to show here is the execution stack. The execution stack. So yes, I have a function. Let me say I have a function, this function A, and a function B, and my function B, sorry. So function in you use the function constructor, then the of the function will be inside the curly braces. So that is a function block. So let me just say, hey, my var, I want my var to be the value to be 1. Then I have another function. I have this other function called a, and this function called a, inside the function called a, I want to call b. I want to call function b. So yes, I want to call function b. Then just after doing that, and I want to define a variable here and just say my var and say my var is equals to 2. So my var here is 2. So then I invoke my function a. I invoke my function a. Yes, so here, let me say I will come and console.log. I will log that on console and log my var. I will log my var. Yes, so then here I also log my. Let me log console log. Let me console log that. Let me console log this. So, guys, let me just pause and ask, what do you expect? Which value of my var do you expect to see? Somebody just type using the chat section. Which value of the var do you expect to see first? Which one will come first? 2. Somebody there is saying 2. Anybody of contrary opinion? 2. Anybody of contrary? I can see they are streaming in, so everybody saying it's 2. Uh, I'm curious. Let me check. I'm curious. Let me check. Let me just check and see. So yes, we go back to our developer tool, and if you check very well, the first one that is displayed is 2, and the second one is 1. Somebody might be wondering why, right? Yeah. Thank you, Samuel. I really wanted you to say that. I really wanted you to say that. So the first one that is executed is 2. I want to explain why. So I don't know. I'm not too good in graphics. I wish I could draw. Okay, where can I draw? Let me just use. I want to draw. But somebody please just bear with me. I want to draw something. I don't know if I'll use the inaitwanga aje painter. I know I'm bad in graphics, but I want to try drawing. Don't laugh at my drawing. I just beg. I want to try just to draw something simple, just to illustrate what takes place. Because basically, this is what we came to do here today. We've come to do today. So we can't rush and have it undone. Let me just do my poor graphics. I'm just sorry. I don't know. It should load faster. I'm poor in graphics. I wish I had Vic here to draw it for me. Eh, but no, it's no, not this one. I don't want to. I don't want to use this one. Tunaitanga aje ni paint. ama sketch. Wait, how do we call it? It's called painter. Mbona sioni paint? Yeah, I wanted this paint. I want this. I wanted this. Uh-huh. I wish ifanye haraka. Sawa. So nataka kuchora kakitu just to demonstrate what happens. So you can see that we add two coming first. So basically, we go back to our code before we draw. We go back to our code before we draw. When I started, when I was execution stack. So in execution stack, the first thing that happens, let me just comment here. It's called creation of global execution context. Creation of the global execution context. That is the first thing that takes place. So in the global context, I'm talking about, it goes and checks all those things in your code, or all the codes that exist in your global scope, the global scope. For instance, this function exists in the global scope. Then this also exists in the global scope. And this also exists in the global scope. And this also is called it's called in the global scope. So first of all, it comes here, or we had said that it is executed line by line. Huh? So first of all, it first creates memo. The first thing that takes place during execution is the memory creation. So it first creates memory for all the variables and the functions that exist. So it creates the memory for all the variables and the function exists, on the function that exists. So it creates memory. So in the global scope, I want you to note something. Inside this function named B, we have this block of code. So when we have anything inside this block of code, is no longer in the global scope. The function itself is defined in the global scope. But now anything that exists within its block, it's no longer in the global scope. Coming to this function, it's defined in the global scope. So in the creation of global execution context, what happens is it goes and create memory allocation for that entire function. Like nothing is done. That memory for that function, maybe length, then the memory for that other function. Then when it comes down, it doesn't execute anything that is inside before everything. Okay, this how it happens. Let me draw. Sorry for the cough. Wow. I don't know which pen will be big enough. Sijui kama I need to me a black. Nichora. Okay. Okay, that's visible. Acha nitoe. Sasa acha nichore. Sijui kama inaonekana. Ni kadogo sana. Somebody niambie kama ni kidogo. Hakuna hata mwenye ananiongelea.
Umechora kweli?
Yeah?
Iko?
Inaonekana kweli?
Hapana.
Yeah?
Hapana.
Haionekani?
Hebu chora sahi.
Hebu nichore. Acha nichague kali.
Kala ni black.
Inaonekana?
Inaonekana sahi.
Haya. Sawa, asante. Acha nifanye haraka sasa, naona muda wangu umekwisha. Nimebaki na dakika. Nimesalia na dakika chache sana. Sorry, Kiswahili ilipita kando na kwetu, lakini ilikataa kupita kwetu. That's not good. Okay, so the first thing that happens, that's too many. So the first thing that happens when you run your code is the creation of the global. So this is created. So the creation of the global execution context. So this is global. Let me just name it G for global. So this is what is first created. So it creates only memory spaces before any other code is executed. It creates memory spaces for all the variables and all the functions that are defined in the global scope. In the global scope. So, for instance, coming back to our code, we can see the things that were defined in the global scope. We had function named b in the global scope. We had function named a in the global scope, and we had a variable named myvar, and it assigned a value of 2. So that because that value exists in the global scope, I will go the engine will create for me. I have my var. I just say I have my var. Let me just give it v and say it's 2. So the value here is 2, because this is the first thing. That's the first value of the variable it comes across. Huh? It comes here and get it in the global context and assign it a value that it's assigned, which is 2. Then the next line it executes this. Then it executes this and creates that memory and assign that memory that value. Then in the next line it calls the rendering engine. Okay, it execute this, which means display, call for the rendering engine to display this value. So that happens during code execution, when now it's being executed after locating the memories. Then, because we had said that JavaScript is single threaded or is synchronous, the next line that it will go to is it will go and call function A. So when function A is called, then my code will come back. So when it comes back to function A, it is a function. Here, it will create another execution context. So here it comes and creates another execution context, because that function has now its own variable. So this execution context are created on top of each other. The second execution context that is created is called A. So it's created for function A. Function A. I'm not good in graphics, so they can't look that neat. So that is the function A execution context. It is created because in the next line we called function A, then it now goes back and refers to function A and create the global and create the execution context. This one means that it will now run it will run the all the code within the function A block. Somebody, I think you get me. But now, checking back here, what happens is that the execution context that is at the top, like now you can see that A is the one that is at the top. The one that is at the top is the one that is executing currently. The one that is executing currently. Yeah. So that is the one that is executing currently. Then inside the function A, it gets a function called B. When it gets a function named B, calling. So it comes and call that function. So it will see that function, then it see that it's a function, then it goes back in the global. You have to understand that all these functions were created in the global context. It goes back and reference back to the global context and look for function A, function B. And when it calls function B, what it does now is that I'm opening a wrong one. It creates another execution context for function B. So you will see that function B execution context is created on top of A. So this is what makes the execution stack. Like ile tu stack unajua ya data structure stack, stack, when if you have a stack of coin, there are things that overlay, like things that is on top of each other. So the one that is at the top is the one that is currently running. So when it is done, it is removed, it is popped out from the memory. Like when it's done, it's popped out. Actually, yeah, that's what it. So when it's done, it's popped out from the memory. So if you come here in our code, you will check that when it runs, this will run after running A, actually. So when I have this, when it go into function A, it will get another variable, my var variable now. but now it is inside the function B execution context, and it finds that the value of var was signed 1. So it comes here and create a memory for var and assign its value to 1. But you have to understand to 1, sorry, not 2, but 1. Sorry for writing that. It's 1. You have to understand that this code are executing synchronously. Or these are single-threaded language. So this one had been executed, and this memory had been created. So it's even created and called. So it your memory into the disk equate displayed first, then the other one will follow. But now, for instance, I have this inside this my var is equals to 3. What do you expect now? What happens? Somebody, somebody just use the chat menu. Which kind of what? Which one is will output the first and the second? The value of the first output of var and the second output of var ni gani? Somebody just use the chat section. Type tu haraka, time imeisha, tafadhali, dakika moja. Hiyo ni swali rahisi. Vic bana, type hata kitu. Steve, tafadhali, yani kwani niko peke yangu?
Si tuko.
Aya, type. Somebody, that is the first. You type the two. You type the first output of var and the second output of var. 231. Yes, somebody else. Thank you, Philip. So yes, he's saying that. Steve said 2, Vic said 2. That is the first. So we just confirm our curiosity. Did it run? We just confirm our curiosity. Sorry, I didn't console. So I come here and console. I log that on my console. So I say my var. So coming back here, it is 231. 231. What if so? Oh, Paminus is saying 213. Paminus, you see, as I had explained, you can see in my diagram, it first created initially hakukuwa na hakukuwa na var kwa nini? Hakukuwa na var kwa a. So in the next round now, the code that you have, it first run the global context, then it executes a, and inside a now we have var that is defined, v is defined and assigned a value of 3. So this memory is created first before calling this function. What if we have it like okay, wow. So just a moment. So what if we have it like this? Somebody guess. What do we have? What do we have? So thank you. Yeah. So basically that. So because it will first execute, so Paminus, what you said will come now in our second place. So what happens here is that when it comes to function A, it first get function B. It calls function B and execute it, and now after doing that, because it first, by the way, we say JavaScript lines are single-threaded. It's executed line by line. It comes here and find function B called. It's reference back to function B and execute everything inside that function block. Ingekuwa inaita ingine, pia ingeendele, like if there was a function called inside B, it would have called that function before. For instance, let me create that. Yes. Let me just see that scenario. Let me just have that. I know my time is up, but I'm still a bit far, so just add me a few minutes. So yes, so my var. Really? So let me give this 4. So what do we expect? Somebody, what do you expect? So what do you expect? Let me have this at the end, actually. Let me just have it there at the end. Somebody, what do you expect? Somebody just type haraka haraka ndo tuende haraka. Una expect nini? Mtu anaona tu, unaweza type mbio mbio tukienda. Kindly. What do you expect? Somebody just type. In programming, everybody's right. we might only define logic. Only the logic might not be the same, but we are always a program is always what we expect is we expect it to be like it comes to B and execute everything inside B, and when it's done it creates this memory, and say my var is 1, the first var will be 2, then comes 1, then it meets this, then it executes that. After executing that, it's now go to that line that it left pending. The line that was left pending was my var is equals to 3. Then the last value will be my var is equals to 3. Just to confirm our curiosity. Sorry, I didn't console that. I didn't log that on my console. So let me just log it. Let me log my var. So yeah, that's actually what we expect. So 3 will come last. Yeah, good, Philip. That's what will happen. So execution context. So for execution context, for our scenario, we have to understand that all our functions that we do, for instance, I do away with this and have this inside B, have that inside B. So there's now the difference in scope. My function named C changes the scope to its scope is now it's over, like its scope it's now over the scope of B, like its scope is. So so I have it there. After having it there, let me just call it and run that code. It's still the same, but the output is still the same. It won't have any difference. But when this function is here, one thing that I want us to note, I cannot call it anywhere outside the function B. When function C is created here, I can't call it anywhere outside function B, because other than the scope happens. When I have it here, when I come have it call it in this function, call it here, you will see I'll get an error. No, call it here. In that global, in that scope, it's not defined. Scope means that where something is accessible. Where can I access the function C? It was only defined inside my B block. I can't access it outside that function. Yes, so said and done. So in terms of the execution context, that context will be created over B. Hata ingekuwa nje ya B bado ingekuwa tu created over B, but now it's stack of C. Hii ni C. Acha niseme ni C which var, let me just say var is equals to var is equals to 4. Hey, guys, just forgive me, my graphics is wanting. So this is linked to B because it was created inside the B block. It only exists inside B. Then B exists inside the B exists in the global scope, and A also exists in the global scope. So this is what we call the execution stack. Have tried. We might get another time to explain about it. So, variable environment, I've explained them. That's using. By the way, I had talked about the concept of hoisting. I'm not going to do much on it, but all I have to say, variable environment would discuss around where variable lives, So, like we were seeing in our code here, we were seeing that this value only exists in this scope. So this is where it exists actually. This way this is only, this value is only constrained here. It's only like this value is only the value of my var is only 3 in that scope. Otherwise, it is modified if that same variable name is used in the global scope. Oh wow. And if you have a question, kindly let's take this time to explain, ask the questions. But hoisting, I think hoisting I had explained last time. I don't know if I have something to add on it. Hoisting, by the way, would only mean hoisting. Just think of it as before a code is executed. By the codes are executed line by line. But now, before a code is executed line by line, the JavaScript engine has already set aside the memory. It's already set aside the space, the memory space for the variables and functions that are created in our entire code. Actually, yes, because if those variables are not in the global scope, they are in the function scope. And those function scope, you must find that one was in the global scope. So that function in the global scope, even that function that is defined inside it, its memory will be created in that scope. So hoisting would mean that before I execute all my code, the engine, the JS engine first create memory allocation for all my variable definitions and all my function definitions. That's what hoisting is. And there is also something called TDZ, temporal dead zone, where a variable you can't, it's basically an error. So it doesn't exist with our let language. It's okay. So before variable, before all variables in JavaScript, all variables that are initialized in JavaScript, like all variables that are defined or instantiated in JavaScript, their value, okay, all the values that are defined in JavaScript are initialized to and defined. Undefined. Yes, said and done. And well, I have scope chain. I won't talk much about this. I think this is the last screen. Yes, that's the last screen. There is more, but in this slide, this is the last screen. The next rest we shall talk about next time. So scope chain, it's not, so scope chain, actually we've talked about this much of it, but I just want to demonstrate the scope chain as the last thing. And here it's all about, I'm going to talk, the new thing that I didn't talk about here, it's the outer context. What is the outer context of something? We have the outer context, like for our functions that are created inside the global scope. They have an outer context. Their outer context, the outer context of those functions is the global context. I guess somebody understood me. We have the function context that exists within that function. And the outer context of that function, if it was defined in a global scope, then its outer context will exist in the global scope. Or if I have a function defined inside another function, then that function, the inner function will be having its context, and its outer context will be its outer function. Wow. Let me just say that. Let me just demonstrate that. I think that's the last thing I'm demonstrating, then we are done. Let me just do away with this. Okay, not really easy, bana. So let me just talk of scope chain. I defined what a scope is. A scope is where, so just to say, a scope, this define where something is accessible. Let me just say something is accessible. Okay, it's not a function anyway. So got that done. So I want to demonstrate the scope chain. So for instance, I will have a function, this function, let me call it B. So this function B is having my variable, okay, function B is trying to console.log, it's trying to log my var, s is trying to log my var, but now you get that my var, what's the var here, and I have my var was defined in the global, it's not defined inside the function, but my var here, let me just give it the global scope. So when I run my code, when I go to my developer tool and check out my code, did I name it the same? I console that. So control my var. You expect it to call this. Let me just copy this. But it's the same. I can see it's the same. Let me do here. So console.log. I log my var. Let me see. Okay, but if I comment that out, okay. So my function it's not accessing my global scope, but it doesn't throw me an error, because if I was trying to access this, let me say if I comment this and try to console that, I will have an error. Basically, hey, is there something sleeping here? Okay, kidogo to control that. Why is it? I have something defined up here. Yeah, I've commented all the codes. So that commented. Kidogo tu, just a moment. Kidogo. Aya. Then I have that. Library enabled. Let me see this. Let me see. Just want to see something. This in my function B, I'm trying to access a function that is not created and it's not giving me any output. This ought to be an error because it's not anywhere. It's initially it could not be an error because it was being referenced in the outer context. So it might be an issue of my lint, and that. So sorry. So let me just say, let me have that. Trying to, okay, let me have it differently. Then function B, inside function B, I have another function. This function here, it's called function A. So this function A, it's now the one that does this. I just want to try something. So just to demonstrate the scope, the scope chain. So here it's where I'm defining my var. Actually, I will see. I will try to change it. My var. So here it's where I'll say my var is, let me just say 5 and see what happens around that. Okay. So could it be my ESLint? Let me just check. Let me just check that. What happens around that? I don't know why it's not executing, but the output that I expect, I don't expect to get an error because when this value is trying to reference the value that is defined in the scope that it can access. This function, inside it's its own scope, but outside it there is a scope of another function. It's inside another function scope. So if you check this variable, it is defined inside this scope. Then even if it was outside here, then I will still get that value, because this function will still go back and reference to the global scope. I just can't tell why it's not doing that, but let me shift this code if that will give me an error. I need to get an error so that I know what's not working. I need to get an error. Let me try to access that and get an error. Here I expect an error. So I expect an error. It's neither, I'm not even getting an error. I expect an error because I am trying. Sorry. I'm very sorry. Oh, now I know what I was not doing. Somebody didn't tell me, but it's okay. Sorry, I've learned. I've known what I was doing. I did not call my function. I did not call my function. So I did not call my function. So I was just trying to execute something that does not exist. So if I do that, you see I get an error, or basically yes. So let me just go back to the initial code that I had. So I did not somebody didn't tell me that. Anyway, it's okay. So I come here and run my function. Actually, I have to call my function to run it. I was not calling it. I didn't see that. So you see here, I'm calling my function B, and I'm not calling function A, so I will call A. Yeah, so I'm seeing that. So I'm calling A. So if I call A, you see I get the value of 5. I can't get an error, but I get the value of 5. Why do I get it? Because my function B here, it is trying to look for the value of my var that is not defined inside it. So what the engine does is that it goes back and reference into the outer function, the outer environment. And inside the outer environment, it will go get that code, that line of that variable when initialized, and call its value. Even if I have that not, I don't have that there, and and ma'am, kidogo, a few minutes, please. Uh, Let me comment out. Let me comment that, and now when I have it run, you see now I will get the global scope. Why? Because this function, it's called here. This thing is referenced here. So inside this function, it will go back to the outer function, the outer environment, and it doesn't find that function. Then now, this function now goes out to the outer environment. The outer environment is now the global environment. So inside that, it's when in the global environment, it will check if we have that given variable that is referenced, initialized in the memory or allocated in the memory. If it gets the value, then we get the output. And if it missed that value, then it will give you an error. For instance, let me just have it here. It will give me an error. It will give me an error of that is not defined. For instance, this also happens. But now, instead, I have a function. So this function is called function A. So function A. So this thing here, only exists inside the function A. So now you will see that, you will realize that, okay, inside the my var, the scope of my var has changed. It has changed. It's now inside another function. It's now no longer in the global scope, but my function A is in the global scope. So when I chain back the function, the scope chaining, A will look for that. A will look for that. No, I had A actually. No, let me change this to C. So A will look. A will look back. We look into its scope. It calls a my var. Then it goes to the global scope. No, it goes into the outer function scope, and it misses that variable defined in the memory, then it goes to the global scope. Then if it misses that variable, then it says if it doesn't exist in the global scope, then it does not exist anywhere. What it does, it throws you an error. So if we check our code, you'll see that it throws an error that that thing is not defined, because I went and rewrote my code and had that variable inside my my function C scope. But you see now here, when I call C, when I call the function C, I will get that variable. Um, Let me just console not return. I am running on that, so console.log my var. So my var, okay, to my var. So so having it there, you see, I get for function C, it will run and gives you an output. But when it runs the next line, because we had said that it's executed line by line, it runs that it now meets an error. It first execute the first line and get an output, render the output, then it goes this point and meets an error. What if we had this below that? I just want you to understand how the execution takes place in JavaScript. What if this was below that? What do you expect? Do you expect to get any output? Not at all, because it meets the first, it first calls B, then when running B, it gets an error. Then our code is exited. So it's basically exited at that point. And I'm also exiting at this point. I will leave it at that point for now. I am welcoming any question that is around. Kindly, let's take this time to ask our questions. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed hosting and presenting to you.